back to Radiality. It's Mark
Hi guys, Inessa and Mark here. We're gonna continue talking about spirituality and religion. Here we are. I'm not that much into politics.
I'm not that much into it, but right now I'm really worried. I'm worried for not just American politics, I'm worried for what's going to happen in the world if they don't get rid of these people. They are truly criminal.
Who you referring to?
The current presidential administration is his attorney general, who's the nation's leading law enforcement officer. That's the highest law enforcement officer in our country, is the attorney general, and he's under federal investigation for not only possibly perjuring himself, but for espionage, right? For counterintelligence operations against the fucking country and the president.
Well, I don't think we can do much about it right now.
Well, they're doing it, but it takes a while. It's a slow process. And the Republicans are fighting it because they realize if Trump gets impeached, they're not going to be able to steal from poor people and take away women's health care and you know what I mean? Gut the banks.
If it was your choice, what would you do?
To do what?
To change the situation.
You mean like if I could magically snap my fingers and change like everything? What would I do?
Yeah.
I would get rid of representative government. I think democracy is stupid. Democracy is tyranny by majority, and the margin is fine if it's 97% of the people want a tax on high fructose corn syrup. Okay, 97% of the people want that. That's not so bad. If 3% of the people just, they're like, well, we didn't want to tax it, but we have to go along with the group. In those instances, democracy is fine. But when you're talking about 50-50, 55-45, a lot of people get fucked when that happens. So it's like, democracy is tyranny by majority. If 51% of the people in the United States voted to shoot people that have red hair, don't have red hair tomorrow. Of course it's stupid, but we voted for it. That makes it legal. Well, fuck. Everything that Adolf Hitler did was legal. I mean, they wrote the law to make it legal, but that made it legal. Yeah, tyranny by majority is stupid. Because, and again, we talked about Romanism. We have a Roman government. You know what I mean? It's a republic. It's a democratic republic, just like Rome. We've got a Senate. We got a bunch of people who are a bunch of old men who make decisions for people that they don't understand or know anything about, but they don't care because that's not why they're there. They're there to make money. And the problem with representative government is it takes the responsibility of self-governance and responsibility out of the hands of the governed. They bitterly complain about their situation, but they don't do anything about it, and they don't do anything to seize control of their own future, their own destiny, their own whatever. They elect somebody and send them to Washington, and then they go back to eating Taco Bell and driving on the interstate until they realize that now Taco Bell costs $10 for a burrito and the interstate's full of potholes, and they're like, I don't know what happened. How come they're not fixing this stuff? I don't understand how come they... Well, that's the problem. You don't understand. This is a digital age. We should be able to make people... You don't have to be responsible for every little fiscal vote. But shit like healthcare child services, women's health. Everybody should vote on that.
How about men's health?
Well, but see, the thing about men's health is, men have like more heart attacks, more strokes. They get prostate cancer and stuff like that. But women's health starts at reproductive age, because most men generally they don't have a lot of problems until they get to be like 70, 60, 70 years old. Then they start having the prostate and all these other issues. But most men, I mean, they don't have endometriosis. They don't have the painful periods. They don't have periods at all. They don't have to give birth to children. They don't ovulate all the time. They're not, you know what I mean? There's a whole thing with women's health that has to be focused on. And men are just sort of, you wind them up and let them go, they don't have all that.
Oh, I hear you. Would be nice to have that, and also have some sort of freedom of not have too much of the regulations from the government.
Regulations are fine if the regulations are beneficial. I mean, the only reason that we have regulation is because there's been abuses in the system somehow, or to put protections in place. I don't disagree with regulations. I think those are fine. I mean, I think that you can choke something to death with regulations, but...
Yeah, like freedom of speech.
Well, freedom of speech isn't regulated.
I know, but I mean, when you have a government like Russia was before, and probably now still.
It's now.
It's now too.
Yeah, their opposition leader
organized
a peaceful
you cannot
protest.
Even speak.
He organized a peaceful protest the
Your
other
mind.
day. He walked out of his house. Didn't even go to the protest. As soon as he walked out of his house, the police jumped out of the bushes and grabbed him, put him in a van and took him to jail. And then they went to the protest. And when the people at the protest heard that he'd been arrested, they got angry. So the police beat all of them up and took all of them to jail.
Exactly. So you see what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know.
Well, I grew up in that communistic Russia, and no one was talking around about their government or what's wrong with it, except my father. My father did. He didn't get killed like others who were expressing themselves in songs and stuff. They suddenly would get killed. Mysteriously disappear or something. So yeah, you couldn't speak up in Russia. When government has too much control, it's not much you can do. You are living like in a box. You don't make much change. Everything is just already set for you, and there is not much you can do. So I don't know, what is your version of government? I hear what you want, to happen, but how do you actually make that happen in practical way, not a wishful way?
Well, we make a lot of things compulsory because they're good for the state. Registration for the draft. Right? You know what that is, right? All males of the age of 18 must register for the draft. Mm-hmm. So that if there's a war, then you go in the list. And if they call you, then you have to go, right? And it's compulsory. It's not compulsory because it's a punishment or something. It's compulsory because it is sometimes necessary to preserve the nation's interest and life by use of force, right? So just as that is compulsory, I think that voting should be compulsory. I think it should be a requirement just like paying taxes or registering for the draft or having to get a license plate for your car or whatever. It should be a requirement. And then, we don't have to have every little school board decision and all of that stuff on the ballot. But the things that Congress votes on, the things the Senate votes on, the public should have some sort of an input. And we can keep those bodies in place, but there should be like a third organization, group, caucus that protects the interests of not just the constituents of the people in the Senate and Congress, but also speaks the voice of the people. Even in Rome, they had that. They called it the Tribune, the People's Tribune. And the person who was the People's Tribune was always chosen from the plebeians, the lower class. They couldn't be a noble. I mean, our system isn't perfect, but gone are the days when, from the fields of Virginia to Washington, D.C., was a 2-day horse ride. That's not what we have now.
Yeah.
And so it's unnecessary to pack up one of our own and send them up to some rich, fancy place where they get to live off the fat of the land and make decisions that nobody even knows about, nobody even hears about. You can go check their voting record, you can research it, you can look it up, but you don't know what any of these fucking people are doing or talking about in these little shitty cabinet meetings and whatever else they're doing. They're just figuring out new and more interesting ways to carve up the country amongst themselves, and that's what they're doing. And people want to know why their lot in life is so bad in a country as rich as America. America could afford, as a nation, just in arms sales alone to other countries, they could afford to give all of their citizens a living wage, just give it to them. And it wouldn't fuck the budget or anything. I mean, of course, we'd have to not give all that money to the military. But, since we already outspend the other top 10 militaries on the earth, we spend more than Russia and China and England and France and Germany, Russia, everybody, all together on military. And most of it's waste, fraud, and abuse. So these guys, they figure out how to do these arms deals and drug deals, and when I say drug deals, I don't necessarily mean like cocaine and heroin. I mean, you want some painkillers for your country? You want some antidepressants for your country? You want some penicillin for your country? We'll sell it to you. We'll sell it. Because that's what we're all about. Capitalism is a terrible way to redistribute the wealth. It's a terrible way to do it. Unless you put protections in place to avoid syndicates and monopolies and, like, if ABC and NBC and CBS, were all one thing, we'd have a problem. But it's getting closer and closer to that every day. Because those people keep buying and selling, and they own your cable company, they own your internet company, they own the television company. Oops. They own every channel. So they're not. It's not going away anytime soon.
It's funny because, when I think about the government that I was raised in, right? It seems like, you get everything controlled, but no one is questioning that. Some of them question, but not majority are not questioning that. So they just live the lifestyle they live. It's presented to them, so they were born into, into religion and everything else. But that is just one government entity that's regulating that, for the most part. A group of people. And in the United States, we have corporations that do that. You know? So a few, but still, they're huge. They have power, so they regulate everything.
Yeah, so I mean, like a country is like a pie.
And just control everyone by through media, and just and control everything. And you need the internet. You just have to plug in, because if you want to be plugged in, plug in with that company that regulates everything.
Right.
And then
Well,
they dictate what they want you to see, how, and everything else, because they have
But then
power.
when you say that
money.
it's corporations that do that versus the government, you have
But
to
government, well,
you have
don't
to think
you think
about that in a capitalist society,
they have influence
the
in
government
a lot because
and
they fund it.
the government and the corporations are one thing,
Well,
especially in the United States.
depends.
No, it doesn't depend. The corporations and the government are one. They're one entity.
Why you say that?
You ever watch NASCAR? You ever seen like a car race,
No.
like an automobile race?
Well, I've seen, but not
Right, you see the
necessarily.
guys that drive those cars, and they're going out there to get in their car, and they're wearing this suit, and the suit has the oil company here, and it has the tire company here, and it has the patches everywhere for the spark plugs they use, and their Chevrolet and all that, whatever their car is. If politicians were required to do the same thing, to actually wear patches on them that had their corporate logo, it wouldn't fit on their suit.
You're funny. Well, I see what he's saying.
I mean, when people get into corporations,
Well, government are sponsored all these elections and stuff like that.
no, they're completely paid.
Yeah.
They're paid, right? And the people who pay them are called lobbyists, right? So what they are is they are people who have a political or a corporate interest who curry favor with the politicians in order to get their laws and legislations passed. And the way that a lot of them are doing it now, since the Citizens United case, where they decided that corporations could donate money like people to political campaigns, and it's virtually unlimited. Now corporations are just buying politicians. They're just you want $1 million to run your campaign.
So that's what you mean when you say that the government corporations fund.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Because
lobbying isn't illegal, and now that the Republicans are in charge, and even at state government levels, they're making it to where cash gifts from lobbyists are legal. A lobbyist can walk up to a politician and hand them an envelope full of money and say, hey, I know you're going to go to vote for that this afternoon. I know you're going to vote our way. Any government that's run like that needs to be set on fire. And the people who are instituting that sort of behavior need to be the first against the wall. The bad part about revolutions is they always get hijacked by thieves and criminals. The Iranian Revolution got hijacked by Islamic fundamentalist thieves and criminals. And of course, before Stalin was the leader of Russia, he was a bank robber. Do you know that? Stalin used to rob banks and take the money and give it to the resistance.
No, I didn't know that.
That's how he got so popular in the party. He used to rob banks. It's funny.
How could they elect somebody with criminal background? Nobody knew about that.
Okay.
Unless somebody did there.
If you think back in history, or you read, if you read like famous literature or Shakespeare, where they're talking about the king and the throne and the power and all this stuff, and its intrigue and all these things are going on. The king is always he's noble, and his bloodlines are ancient, and they've been kings in this land since whatever. But then the question is, how do you get that? How do you get to be the king from ancient something something? And
Exactly.
and here's the glamorous real truth about how you get to be the king
You just
since ancient
announce
times.
yourself
You
a
show
king.
up in the middle
You
of the
just show
night
up.
with a bunch of guys who are carrying either swords or sharp sticks or something, and you're all dressed in little round furry hats, and and you say, okay, so we're going to sneak down there and kill everybody, and then I'll be the king first. How's that? That's how noble they are.
Well, or maybe they show up, someone shows up and said
Right.
God spoke to them and
So
told him that he's supposed to be a king.
Well, a lot of people say
That
that.
happens too, and people trust.
Well, that's what happened. That's what happened to King Arthur.
See?
That's what happened to Jesus.
I don't think Jesus was bragging about being a king or a son of God or God.
Well, Jesus didn't exist. Yeshua never said that. But Jesus, the poorly translated, horribly misunderstood, and misquoted Jesus, the media product, the guy with the thumbs up, who's all that guy, Kenny Loggins, blonde hair and stuff. Yeah, that Jesus absolutely is claiming to be a king. Ask any Christian, they'll tell you. Although Jesus never made that
Well,
claim.
I'm not talking about Jesus as Jesus.
But his followers claim that that's exactly what happened. God came down and told him that he was going to be king of the world and the universe. Right? King Arthur, was ordained by his
Wait,
mysterious magical bloodline that he was going to be the king. Right? It's. I told you about this myth. We've only got one myth in the whole fucking Western world.
yeah, you told me.
And the myths that involve girls, women, are never nice ones. They never get to be the king or the queen
The culture
or
was
whatever.
different there.
Huh?
The culture is different.
Yeah.
So
In the stories about women, women are property. Right? Beauty and the Beast, this new film that's come out. Everybody's, oh, Beauty and the Beast. I love Beauty and the Beast because they got the songs and it's a love story. And no, it is not a love story. Beauty and the Beast is a horrible, horrible story. It's a frightening story. Right? You know the story, right?
yeah,
The guy,
it's the same old story.
the father, goes into this garden in a castle as he's wandering down the road, and he sees this garden off this fine place. In the snow, there's a rose that's growing there. So he goes and he picks this rose to bring to his daughter because he didn't bring her something he was supposed to bring her. And the giant beast comes out and forces him by bargain to give up his daughter for this trespass. So then she has to go, the good, obedient daughter has to go and live with the horrible beast, and he's horrible and whatever. And then eventually she sees like his real nature and what he's really like, and he's really misunderstood, and then her love turns him into a handsome prince, and they live happily ever after. This is a story from the darkest fucking time for women's history, when women were like, you gotta marry old what's-his-face over here. But he's a horrible, gross beast. Yeah, you'll learn to love him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's ugly and horrible and yeah, but he owns the pig farm next door and we need that. Even though he's 20 years older than you and gross. Right? And that's what that is. The same thing with the Princess and the Frog. You know that story.
No.
Yeah, well, that's
we
it.
just watched that one cartoon. Remember?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, but the Princess and the Frog is actually,
Dimovichka.
it's a different story,
Well,
but it's
similar.
incorporated in it.
Yeah, it's similar.
Well, no, it isn't, because in the story of the Princess and the Frog, or sometimes called the Frog Prince, The princess has a toy, like a ball. It's like made of gold, and she's
Oh yeah,
playing with
that
it.
one is different.
And
Story, right.
she drops it down a
You're right.
well. And then the frog comes and says, "If you'll take me home with you and let me live with you, I'll go down in the water and get your
Yeah,
thing."
yeah.
So she goes down. He goes down and gets it, but then she tricks him and runs away.
Yeah, that's the story when. No, yeah, that's Dimovichka, but the story you're talking about when she kisses a frog.
And he turns into a
Turns
prince.
into prince.
Right.
Yeah, that's a different story.
Right. And so the thing is, that story is also, but he's a toad. He's a frog. He's horrible. He's gross. Kiss him. It'll be okay. You'll learn to love it.
What is your point?
Well, what I mean is like, that's the only feminine story there is.
Oh.
You are property. You are chattel. And the men's story is always the same story. Your birth is obscure, but you're really a special person, and you're going to find out, and then when you do, you're going to have all these powers, and maybe even magical swords and magic wands and whatever, and you're going to fight your enemies and be victorious, even if you get killed, as Jesus and King Arthur, and I imagine Harry Potter will eventually die, I hope so, in a book. And then, well, it's like, whatever.
Well, everybody dies. What are you talking about? There has to be.
Yeah, but wizards tend to live a few hundred years and be annoying while they're doing it. So, but the thing is we've only got one myth, and that myth permeates our society to the point where you don't have to be responsible for your actions because you can ask Jesus for forgiveness. You don't have to be responsible for your actions because you hired dumbass to go to Washington and fuck shit up for you. You don't have to be responsible for anything. That's the American way. You are not personally responsible for anything. Right?
Right. Well, not just American way, I think. In every society, there is something you're not really responsible for the whole.
Yeah, but we have representative government, like Democratic Republic government. We have Christianity as our main religion. We have capitalism as our main economic engine. It's the ultimate, I'm not responsible for anything package.
Well, I'm just thinking about communistic or socialistic
But those aren't any good
societies.
either.
I know, but you're more like you're viewing everything. It's like you're responsible for the whole, right? We got you, you got us. It's like individual and whole. It's more like you're living in a mindset of communal thing, But people don't act that way even then,
You know why communism doesn't work?
Well, they don't act that way. That they are responsible anyway.
Right.
Because there's a lot of there are a lot of individuals that they are counting that others got it, so they don't have to. You know what I mean? It's like they don't have to put hard work into being a good citizen or creating a good life for everyone, not just me. They think, oh, all those people there, they got the message, they will do it for me. So they can just slack off or think of themselves only. So it doesn't really work even if you grow up in that kind of mindset.
Right, that system doesn't work, but it doesn't work for an even more important reason. It doesn't work from the top down, not the bottom up. Same thing with America when they're like, oh, all these people on welfare are getting a handout. You could give everybody on welfare a handout. You could give them health care and money and food and a place to live, and it still wouldn't impact our budget unless you don't take that money from the people who are stealing it and putting it in their pockets. And the same thing happened in the system in Russia. They had everybody is the same. We're all comrades. Everyone is on the equal footing.
It's just a different myth.
But communism doesn't work because, as my political professor, Dr. Ulster, said one time, he said, pants have pockets. And when pants have pockets, people have pockets, and that means they want something to put in them. And communism doesn't work because the people at the top find a way to create an oligarchy where they steal it all, so that the people who are supposed to be benefiting across the board and everybody gets something nice, get something not nice or mediocre or not so good because all the money's been stolen out of it. And eventually you end up with like any other fucking government, just like our shitty government, a bunch of fucking thieves at the top, and everybody else having no responsibility for anything and not taking care of it and not, um, they're just incapable. This is why we had kings for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We had chiefs and kings.
Worked better?
Because people just can't fucking govern themselves. They can't manage their own fucking shit.
What did you say that, like, if we had a king right now, it didn't work, we just cut his head off?
Yeah. And that was the good old days,
And replace him?
Hey, look. Back in the days, if you had a king, and he was like, I'm going to take all of the wealth of all of my lords, and I'm going to spend it on this war that I want to spend it on, and you guys can't do anything about it. They chop his head off and blame it on the Vikings. Oh, the Vikings! They attacked, and we went out there, and he just got chopped to bits. That sucks.
Imagine you're a king right now. How are you gonna fix all this?
But you mean like a king, or some constitutional lame-ass fucking monarch? You mean like
a king in your sense of kingdom? How would you run this country and fix it? All the mess that was made by now. It's still in the making.
Well, I mean, of course it would be complicated. It would be very complicated. I think the first thing that America needs to do, if we were to try to organize ourselves, I mean, we can't help the rest of the world until we unfuck ourselves. So we have to start here. Charity starts at home.
So how are you gonna start unfucking yourself? What are you gonna start?
Well, I think the first thing that you would have to tackle is something that would bring the people to you.
And how are you gonna go about it?
You uncouple corporate money from government. You extinguish the ruling of the Supreme Court on Citizens United. You get the money out of politics. You make churches who engage in political activities, force them to be political organizations, or tell them to get the fuck out of it. No more religion in politics at all. No tampering, no mixing, no accidental elbow rubbing, nothing. Gone, out. You make people responsible for their own government, but they should have to, on things as important as defense, going to war, healthcare, things like that, that it's an actual vote of the actual will of the people. I guess that's more like a constitutional monarch. I mean, a great way to start would be to put a series of bureaucrats in place that simply carry out the orders of established government. You take all of these people here and put them against a wall and shoot them.
Whoa.
I mean, you'd have to. Because what would you do with them otherwise?
Well, you'll have to make a new constitution for this.
No, if you were king, you'd just take the Constitution and tear it into little shreds and throw it out the window.
So you're thinking about having a superior power over everything.
That would be the definition of a king.
Oh, I see.
If you have a parliament that controls you because you were King John back in the day, and you were stupid enough to sign the Magna Carta, which limited the powers of the king.
So you don't want anyone to help you make a decision.
No, if you had true
decision.
imperial power, real
Whoa.
imperial power, I think the right person could absolutely make and effect great change. Unfortunately, like right now, you see this asshole right here?
Oh.
Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House.
Oh, yeah.
If Trump gets thrown in prison and his vice president gets thrown in prison, this guy becomes the president of the United States. And not only does he look like fucking Eddie Munster from the fucking Munsters TV show. You never saw that.
No.
It was great. It was like
Why you say that?
it was
He
a
doesn't
family where
really look
it was like a
him.
family where everybody was monsters. So like
Why does he
the
look to you
dad
like a
was
monster?
Frankenstein, and the mother was like a vampire, and they had a son named Eddie Munster, and he was like a little wolf boy, like a little wolf man, and that's what he looks like. He looks just like Eddie Munster. Plus, I can't tell if his ears are like, you know, swinging in the breeze, or if he's a taxi cab with both the doors open, you know.
You know, if you were living in Russia, you'd probably be dead by now, like Vysotsky and Soy and.
Oh, I'd absolutely be dead. Yeah,
You would
I'm lucky
completely-
I'm not dead in America.
You wouldn't even be able to say anything next day. Things that you're saying.
No, I've been in plenty of, like, you know, serious fights and scraps with people who claim that they're Christians, and if I say one more thing about Jesus, they're gonna fucking go crazy and kill me.
Not just that. The politics of it, you know.
Mm. Yeah, all of these guys are criminals. And they admit it on TV. But people aren't smart enough to see nuance. They can't understand what's being said to them. All they know is, well, he's a Republican, so I'm for him. Because they're for Jesus.
I always avoid politics.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's probably a good policy. Politics is bullshit.
And that's unfucking politics.
Radiality-On.